Good morning, YouTube. It has been about 2 weeks since I've done a garden tour, so it's only about 5:30 in the morning. I'm going to let the sun come up just a little bit more while I do my chores, and then let's walk through the garden together. Okay, chores are done. Everybody has been fed and is taken care of. Eggs are collected. So now I get to come out to my garden, and I'm gonna walk around with you guys and just kind of point out some of the differences from the last garden tour, and then also kind of walk you through the list of things I have planned for garden work for today. I have a lot to get done yet. I'm not completely planted. I probably still have about 2 weeks before I'll be completely planted. But let's go ahead and get started with the garlic, and I'll just kind of circle my way around the garden and explain some of the things that have changed and some of the things I have planned. Before we get into the garlic, you can kind of tell we are past the peak bloom for the mock orange. We also had a series of pretty strong winds with our storms. We didn't have the intense like tornadic storms that were expected, and I'm thankful for that, but we did have some pretty strong wind and a little bit of hail. And so the mock orange is pretty much done or past its peak. The blooms are all starting to fall to the ground now. So that's a little bit sad, but I sure did enjoy it while it was blooming, and it was so fragrant. The garlic, it's looking pretty good. Now you can kind of tell the tips are a little bit burnt, and that is because we had a pretty late frost at the tail end of April, and it kind of nipped them a little bit, but they survived and they are going to be just fine. I don't see any garlic scapes forming yet, which I'm kind of okay with. I love the garlic scapes. I love to cook with them. I also sell them in my farm store, but I've been so busy just trying to keep up with everything that I'm kind of glad that I don't have those to harvest yet, but I have a feeling it probably won't be but a couple of weeks. Okay, moving on past the garlic, I'll get to my raised beds here in just a minute. But this is where we had a small asparagus bed. We have asparagus on a few different places on our property, and this is one of the least established beds that we have. But we are letting them all grow up and seed out. Asparagus is pretty much done for us this year, and we'll just this fall we'll come in and we'll burn these down, but in the meantime we'll let them fern out, feed the birds. Honestly, I have found that the best asparagus on our property has been from birds eating the seeds on these ferns and dropping the seeds in their droppings on random places, usually along the fence line of our pastures or next to some trees. And that is the best asparagus, the hardiest, the most tender stalks. So if you can let the birds do the work for you, it's going to be better. And then our poor peonies really didn't do well during that storm. Some of them have not opened up yet, so I'll still have some really pretty blooms with that. And this one's not too bad, but like this one was already fully opened when the hail hit, and it really did a number on it. Same with this one. But boy, these were so beautiful this year. We have had the best luck with our peonies this year. Really everything on our farm has bloomed really well this year. Our roses were beautiful. Our irises kind of bloomed a little bit earlier than expected. And my mom even had some Asiatic lilies blooming before Memorial Day, which we don't ever have. We are located just east of Kansas City, Missouri. Zone 6, I think. I don't know. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the zones. But we just don't have that happen before Memorial Day, and this year we did. And I think it's because we had a lot of rain and really good spring temperatures rather than going straight from winter to summer, which is what we typically do. Okay, here we are in my salad bar bed, or what I refer to as my salad bar bed. And I have not had a chance to do any weeding in here, so it's pretty bad. But I've got some romaine lettuce heads starting to form. And I have harvested off of this a couple of times, and we've had some really delicious salads. Like you can see, I harvested the mustard, and it is starting to grow back, but it'll be a little bit before it's fully back. We have some, I think this is my ragged jack, or maybe that's red Russian kale. I don't remember, but we have some kale there. And then this is my Pablo crisp head lettuce, which this is the first year that I have tried this lettuce and we really, really liked it. So we'll definitely be growing that again. And then I have more kale. This I will probably harvest today for lunch. This is also more kale. These are two different varieties, and I'm not the best at remembering the varieties that I plant, but one of them is blue Scotch curled kale, and the other one was just a really cheap seed packet that said kale. So I think this was the cheap seed packet. I think this is blue Scotch curl, but I could be wrong. And then this row here is all of my Swiss chard, and it does go all the way down both sides of the bed. And then I've got some spinach, which I need to come in here because, as you can see, it is trying to bolt. We've had a couple of warm enough days that it's doing that. So I need to come in here, and I need to not be distracted and weed while I'm doing my garden tour, but I just can't help it. But I will probably harvest some spinach for lunch today as well. And then my tatsoi, and it has definitely bolted. So I'm kind of surprised because normally tatsoi is very heat resistant for me, so I'm not really sure what happened here. But I'll probably just feed this to my chickens, and then I'll re-sow some sort of a lettuce or something because I'm kind of low on lettuce. But then again, this is more of that Swiss chard. Okay, now we have my radish bed, which I've been meaning to harvest for about a week now. And because of the rain and trying to get everything planted before the rain, I did not prioritize this. So I think what I will do is I will harvest all of that radish today, get it cleaned up and put it for sale in my farm store. And then whatever does not sell this weekend, I will go ahead and slice up and pickle. And if I do end up having some that doesn't sell and I have some to can, I will show you how I pickle my radish. We love pickled radish on salads in the wintertime because it just gives you a little bit of a taste of summer, and it's crisp and it's cool and we love it. And these are my beets, and I did a really poor job of sowing these, and I haven't come through and thinned them out. So I'm not entirely sure how well they're gonna do, but we'll just have to watch them as they go through the season. And I've got this giant spot here in the middle that was barren. I guess I did a very bad job of sowing these beets. And so I need to come through, clean out all these weeds, and maybe sow some more beets for a succession planting. And I think that would work pretty well. Now, I did come down here between my radishes. I intentionally left a little bit of space, and I planted some pak choi. And I don't know, it's also bolting. I think I got a little behind this early spring, and I should have planted this stuff out way sooner. But as you know, I have a 5-month-old, and so I was a little busy this spring, and that's okay. I'm giving myself some grace, and if some of my early season stuff bolted, I wasn't really depending on that anyways. That's not a part of my CSA program. My CSA program doesn't start for another 4 weeks. I don't know if I mentioned this, but today's May 22nd, and so it's okay. It's not a big deal, and I can always re-sow in the fall. My onions are doing pretty well. Now this kind of barren spot here, this was all leeks, and as you can see, I do have some leeks that are looking really well, but some of my leeks that I got, they did not arrive looking very healthy. And so I was not at all surprised when a lot of them died. But that's okay. I'm more interested in the onions, and those will be a part of my CSA program. So I'm happy to see that the onions are doing well. The birds have finally decided to leave them alone and stop digging them up. Before we go down and talk about my peppers and tomatoes, I want to show you what I decided to do here. As you can see, I've got straw bales that I'm growing in on that first row. I'm going to grow in the straw bales on this row as well. But the third row I decided to dismantle, and I'm going to put my winter squash patch here. Now, normally I put my winter squash in the pasture garden, but this year I'm trying to make things a little bit easier for me. I do have a 5-month-old, and I have a lot going on. I'm also going to be milking a cow. Our cow is set to calve here in a couple of weeks, and that'll be my first time having a dairy cow. And so I've got a lot going on. I do manage the CSA program and my farm store as well. And I'm a stay-at-home mom of 2 kids. So I'm extremely busy, and the thought of lugging a bunch of hoses all the way out to the pasture and going out into the pasture and not being able to take the pack and play out there as easily just did not sound appealing to me. And so since I had the space in my primary garden, I'm just gonna throw everything in here for this year. I won't be able to grow as much of the winter squashes, but that's okay. I don't need a ton of them. And cushaw squash is one of my all-time favorite squashes, but it absolutely takes over your garden. And so I might plant just a few out in the pasture because they are like the most hands-off squash ever. I grew them a couple years ago, watered them maybe twice, and it was a dry year, and they did well. So since they're so hands-off, I might throw those out in the pasture and they can take over the pasture as much as they want. But everything else is gonna go in here in this main garden. All right, let's head down and check out the tomatoes and peppers. I believe I filmed a little bit of planting those and trying to get them in before all that rain. So let's go see how they did after the rain and the hail. On our way down to the tomatoes, I wanna stop here. I am noticing my hyssop is blooming quite nicely, and my coneflowers are sure growing. So we'll see. I don't see any blooms on my false indigo, but it has a ways to go yet. It usually gets pretty tall before it blooms out. So this is all looking really well. And this is part of my plan for the perimeter around my garden. I think I have mentioned this in a video before, but I plan on doing the entire perimeter of my garden in perennials and pollinator friendly plants, just to attract as many pollinators to my garden as I can. So it'll take me years to get this done, but this is a really good start, and I'll show you when we move back up towards the west end of the garden. I'll show you what else I've gotten done. So here's some of my tomatoes, and I actually have some little fruit starting, which is really exciting. I have a lot of weeding to do, but that's never ending in this size of a garden. But as we move on down the rows, you can kind of see I have fruit on several of my tomato plants, which is very exciting. Really, all of my tomato plants look pretty good after the storm. Look at these. I'd have to look in my notebook to see what variety these are. I wrote them all down. For me this year, trying to write out tags and trying to keep them in place in the garden with kids in the garden who like to go and pick up tags just did not seem appealing. So I just wrote it all in my notebook, and I can cross-reference that if I need to. But I'm really pleased to see that the tomatoes are still looking pretty good. The hail, I'm sure, was not their favorite thing, but they survived, and that's the important part. Now, as the season progresses and you can start to tell the differences between all of the varieties, I'll go more in depth with my tours and show you, like I have some Cherokee Purples, I have Paul Robesons, I have Crimson Sprinters, all kinds of tomatoes in here. And I'll go more in depth as we go throughout the season and as I do some harvest videos. That'll be where I kind of showcase the different varieties. But right now, my garden is so big that it would take me forever to do a garden tour if I were to stop at every single plant. So we're gonna move on to the peppers now. My pepper seedlings were pretty small when I planted them out, and then we got all that rain and hail, and I was pretty worried about them, to be honest. But they look really, really good. And yes, I do plant multiple peppers in the same spot. And the reason for that is peppers like to be close. They like to hold hands. And so if I plant 2 or 3 or 4 maybe in the same spot, if 1 or 2 dies back, it still has a couple plants in there, and they seem to do better that way. And I typically don't plant my peppers out until the middle of May or the end of May. This year I was a little bit earlier on it just because I have so much to get planted that I couldn't wait. But I'm pleased to see that they're doing so well. So on this east side of the garden, I have 3 rows of tomato plants. There's 75 plants in each row. And then I have 3 rows of peppers. And there's closer to 150 to 200 pepper plants because I planted multiple peppers in each spot. Then I have a row of kohlrabi, which is germinated, but they're teeny tiny. There's not a whole lot to see there. And then an entire row of okra. and they have germinated. I'll flip the camera around and show you those, but they're also still teeny tiny. They need some warm weather. Once we start getting into really warm weather, they will shoot up like crazy. So here's my okra. I direct sow my okra seeds, and I put several seeds in the same spot. If I need to, I'll thin the plants out, but if they're doing okay, I'll leave them. We love okra, and having a lot of okra is not a bad thing because I can put it in my CSA program and also sell it in the store if we don't eat it all. We typically don't have a problem not eating all of our okra though. We love okra. We love it fried, but we try not to eat very many fried foods, and we love it pickled. Pickled okra is one of my favorite things, and so later on in the season, as we harvest some of that okra, I will show you how I pickle my okra. All right, moving on to the trellis. Now this is where I have a lot of stuff planted, and this thing is gonna look like it has exploded within a couple of weeks. But as you can see right now, I've got my peas on the inside, and we have started getting a few peas here and there. So let me show you. So there's some peas. And here we have some more peas. I just think peas are really pretty. They're so delicate, and honestly, they don't look like they should produce the way that they do, but these things go crazy, and they're trying to grab onto each other. I really want them to grab onto the trellis. So what you can do is you can just kind of gently train your plant to go back towards the trellis, and if you kind of loop a branch like that, kind of loop it around, it'll eventually take hold. Look at these guys. Quite a few peas coming on here, which is wonderful. We love adding these to our salads this time of year. Okay, that's enough with the peas. Let's go check on the cucumbers and the birdhouse gourd and the loofah gourd. So since my peas are planted on the inside of my trellis, I went ahead and did cucumbers, Kajari melon, birdhouse gourd, and loofah gourd on the outside of the trellis. And the reason for that is just because as those peas start to die back is when my cucumbers and the gourds and everything is gonna start growing. And so they can share that space. It's okay, because I'll rip the peas out and the cucumbers will be able to completely take over at that point. And this is how you can maximize space. Now I have a massive garden, and maximizing space is not necessary for me, but I like to do this because it's easier to manage. I have less stuff just everywhere. So if you're growing in a small space, or if you have limited resources, that's a great thing to keep in mind, is planting things that maybe grow at different stages or grow at different paces in the same spot. Okay, so these little guys, I don't know if they're birdhouse gourd or loofah gourd. I planted on the same trellis but on opposite sides, birdhouse and loofah. I think this is birdhouse gourd and loofah gourd is over there. But I started those from seed in my winter sowing jugs, and then I just kind of put in a few seeds direct sown as well. And then as we go down here, this section is dedicated to Kajari melon, and I do see just a few of them starting to pop up, so that's really exciting. It'll be Kajari melon on both sides of this trellis. We have 4 cattle panels, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. This first one, like I said, is loofah gourd and birdhouse gourd. Then we have Kajari melon on both sides. Then we have slicing cucumbers on both sides, but 2 different kinds. I believe that these are the Armenian longs, and I believe Market More is on that side. If not, then it's just vice versa. And then down here is pickling, and it's National Pickling cucumbers on both sides. And my seed was old, and so I didn't get as good of a stand, but I do have several coming up on both sides. I'm not going to show much of the cut flower section because I really haven't got much of that done. That's what's on the agenda for today, is to try and get the rest of the cut flowers in. I've got to get more straw laid out for my winter squashes, harvest the radish, harvest some of the kale. I have a lot to do. It's a little bit overwhelming, but I'm just trying to take it day by day and get as much as I can done each day. So once I have this done, I will show you a cut flower garden tour, and it might actually wait until things start germinating and blooming because there's not a whole lot to see until then. But I did get at least this section done with a massive amount of zinnias. Zinnias, sunflowers, cosmos are the main things that I grow, but I grow a bunch of other random stuff too. But those are what I grow in massive quantities just because I love watching them bloom. Speaking of cosmos, we have random cosmos coming up everywhere. From last year, they reseeded themselves, and so that's actually really good because that helps me out. I won't have quite as much to do. There's some more of the pickling cucumbers. They did a little bit better here on this west side. And then these are the market mores. And again, this is Kajari melon, and I see 1, 2. I don't remember how many seeds. I didn't have a whole lot of Kajari melon seeds, so that might be all I planted on that side. And then the loofah gourd, which I started one from seed in my winter sowing jugs, and the rest I direct sowed. I have never grown loofah gourd, but I've heard that they massively take over, and that once you have loofah gourd seed, you'll never run out because they have a ton of seeds in them. So I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited to try and make my own sponges with it. Maybe I'll sell some in the store if they do well. We'll just have to see. Now my shadow is going to start getting in the way because the sun is behind me. I'm on the west side of the garden, but that's okay. I want to show you a little bit of my experiment. So these straw bales were a gift to us, and we're very fortunate that we were able to receive them. They have been a huge blessing. And so I used to have 2 rows. In the last garden tour, you saw 2 rows. Well, what I decided to do is break down the furthest west row so that I don't have to do as much mowing in here. I'll show you here in a minute, but that's going to be watermelon, and so it can trail out this way and be on the straw. So that'll be fine. But these are dragon tongue bush beans, and they're doing really well in these straw bales. Now, all I did was just kind of made myself a furrow, put a little bit of vermicompost, and put my seeds in. And I think the hardest part about these straw bales, making sure that they stay wet. But with that rain that we got, that has really helped out. So that's more dragon tongue bush beans. This is kohlrabi, which I will have to come in and thin a few of those out. This is another kohlrabi. This is purple kohlrabi. You can kind of tell from the stems. And well, maybe this is purple kohlrabi too. Maybe I did 2 purple kohlrabi. I don't really remember. These are some herbs that have not germinated, and I'm not sure what those are. I'd have to refer to my notebook. Maybe they won't end up germinating. I'm not sure. This is another type of herb, and it is germinating. Again, I'd have to reference my book to figure out what this is. I don't see anything germinating in this one. This is dill, I can tell that, and it's doing well. This one is blank. This one is blank. And this is 2 different types of basil, cinnamon basil and Italian basil. So now we're back up on the perimeter. I told you earlier that I would show you how I have started on the west side with some perennials. I've got some yarrow. There's some calendula in here. There's hyssop. There's more yarrow back there. There's milkweed. There's marigolds. There's daisies. There is hollyhocks. There's strawflower. And what else did I put? I put some lupines in here. But this just kind of wraps all the way around. There's mahogany splendor hibiscus. There's some coleus. There's all kinds of really pretty flowers in here. That is some celosia. And so it starts right there, and it just kind of wraps all the way around until we get to the straw bales down there. So that should fill out really nicely and be a lot of really beautiful blooms as the season progresses. And then while I'm right here, I'll show you my potatoes, which they are flowering. But I have a row of Yukon Golds, Red Norland, and Kennebec. Those look good. They won't change much throughout the season, but when I go to harvest, I'll bring you along for that. Now, there is some volunteer garlic in there as well. That's where I had my garlic planted last year, but I decided I had a better place for the garlic, so I went ahead and put potatoes in there, and they're doing all right. Now, this section here is definitely on my to-do list today. The grass grew up like crazy with that rain, and I have some stuff germinating, and it's at kind of a delicate stage where the grass could take over and choke it out. So I've got to get this taken care of today. And my goal is to film what I get done today in the garden and bring that to you in a video. We'll see how successful I am at that, but this is definitely on the list. Let me turn the camera around and I'll walk you down each of the rows. But we have a row of green beans, we have a row of cabbages that I don't think are gonna do much, and then we have a row of zucchini and squashes and a row of melons. If my cabbages don't end up doing much, I'm gonna do more green beans because I can never have enough green beans, and I'm not super crazy about the cabbages anyways. I can always do them again in the fall, and I've had better luck in the fall. So we'll just see how that works, but let's flip the camera around and show you what we've got. Okay, so the first section is a row of 2, and they're just kind of staggered, and that's all my green beans. I did Roma 2 bush beans and Dragon Tongue bush beans this year, and I think I did a short on this, but my son helped me plant all these, and we were trying to get ahead of the weather, so we direct sowed our green beans really early, and then we got a lot of rain, and some of them did not germinate well, so then I had to come back through and reseed where they didn't. So you'll see varying stages of growth. You'll see some that were clearly planted about 2 weeks ahead of the others, but that's perfectly fine. That staggers my harvesting, which is better for me. So these are some of the later planted beans, and then those are some of the earlier planted. And as you can see, the grass is really trying its best to take over. And green beans don't do well with competition, so I've got to get that grass out of there. And here is some of my cabbages. These are Napa cabbages, and I direct sowed these as well. They also do not do well with competition, so I'm gonna have to get that out of there. But they're actually not looking too bad. Now let's go a little bit further down and I'll show you my more traditional green cabbages. So this is where I had some of my more traditional green cabbage, and I think the grass has really taken over, and so some of these will probably end up getting ripped out and resown as beans. Then the next row is all of my zucchini and squashes. I have several different varieties, so I'd have to reference my book to see which ones are which. They again need to be weeded, but they're looking pretty good. I just direct sowed these about a week ago, so they're doing really well. And all down the line they look like this. I'll kind of walk down and show you. Now some of these, this is not zucchini, but some of these are looking really well and starting to get more and more of their true leaves, which is super exciting. I probably have way too much zucchini and squash planted in this garden, but I do have a farm store, I do have a freeze dryer, and I do can a lot of zucchini relish, so I'm not too worried about it. And then my final row, I did a bunch of different watermelons, and they're germinating, and they're looking pretty good, but I need to get the grass out of there so that they have a fighting chance. Well guys, I think that's just about it for today's garden tour. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. I am gonna head inside and eat breakfast with my family, and then come back out here and get to work, and I will try my best to film some of that, even if I just set the camera up and do a time lapse. But I would love for you to see some of the work that goes into keeping a garden this big. It's a lot of work, and I don't do that great at it, to be perfectly honest. I overextend myself from time to time, and there's a massive amount of work with this garden, and my kids and my husband come first, and then the garden. So that's just the way that my life is right now. So I'm behind, but every day I just get out here and I keep chugging along and I keep doing it, and it brings me so much joy to have my hands in the soil and plant and watch things grow and blossom and put fruit on, and it makes me so incredibly happy to be able to feed my family high quality organic food that I have grown. All of the sweat and all of the frustration that can go into this garden is so worth it when you can sit down at the table and know that the meat was raised by my husband and the vegetables on that plate I grew. So it's very rewarding, but it's a lot of hard work. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this garden tour and hanging out with me this morning. I will catch you all in the next video.